get a plan, know where you're heading. You're not going to construct your dream house without having some kind of plan for the house. You'd be a fool if you did that. But what's crazy is when it comes to our wealth, when it comes to the rest of our lives, very few of us have a written financial plan in place. And take the time, put a plan in place, know where you're going, and then hire the best team possible to help you get there.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Raving Patients Podcast. I want to thank our sponsors, both Dental Intelligence and the doc sites, for their support, allowing me to come to your inbox every single Friday at 5 a.m. with a new episode. I also wanted to mention everybody that we just completed an amazing Supercharger dental practice in Scottsdale, Arizona, September 27th and 28th this year, 2024. And we're doing it all over again in September of 2025, September 26th and 27th. It's at Pier 66 in Fort Lauderdale, Florida. We're going to have tons of announcements about the event coming soon. We've already selected some of the speakers, so we'll start to announce that. But check out superchargerdentalpractice.com to learn more about the event. Again, it's September 26th and 27th, 2025 at Pier 66 in Fort Lauderdale, Florida. My guest is Tim McNeely, who's the founder and CEO of Dental Wealth Alliance. So please welcome to the Raving Patients Podcast, Tim McNeely. Tim, thank you so much for joining me today.
Oh, Lynn, it's so good to be here with you today.
I'm excited to have you. I know we've talked about this before, and I was on your podcast not too long ago, and I'm returning the favor and having you on mine. Tim is the founder and CEO of the Dental Wealth Alliance, where he specializes in helping successful dental entrepreneurs eliminate financial confusion and fear. His expertise extends to providing a virtual family office experience, integrating the best practices of the ultra-wealthy family offices to deliver exceptional financial outcomes. Tim, let's just start off. I know I just read what you do, but I want you to tell the audience kind of what you do and how you help dentists.
For those who don't know me, I'm actually married to a dentist, and this is where it all started. And when I first married my wife, we actually didn't have a lot of financial clarity in our life. There was a lot of financial confusion. And the reason was I was a very ordinary wealth advisor. And this is where a lot of financial confusion comes from, is the professionals who were out there. And as this ordinary wealth advisor, I was focused on just investments alone. I thought it was my job to manage a little mutual fund portfolio for my wife. But as you know, as everyone who's attended one of your conferences knows, as anyone who ever has tried to grow a dental practice knows, there's a whole lot more that goes on in your financial life other than just your investment portfolio. And because I was this ordinary advisor, I couldn't actually help my wife solve the most pressing challenges in her business. I couldn't help her with things like reputation management. I couldn't help her with the issues like improving the cash flow or even mitigating the taxes. I just didn't have the technical expertise to really help her drive the practice forward. And so I reached out, hired some mentors, and really started studying what is true wealth management. And that's what we're going to talk about today, how you can eliminate financial confusion and fear with wealth management. There's 5 steps to it, and that's what we're going to dive in and talk about today is really how you can move things forward by implementing true wealth management and moving beyond the investment portfolio.
Got it. I'm excited to jump into those five pillars, but let's kind of jump into the big question is, why do dentists require different advice? I mean, look, I'm a dentist. I don't practice anymore. Your wife's a dentist. Dentists tend to not be the best business people. They tend not to understand the financial side of things. They're really good at drilling, filling, and billing, and doing all these other things related to the clinical side. But there is some lack of understanding on the business and finance side. So why do dentists require different advice here?
Yeah, absolutely. Such a good question. And really, let's even start with there is an advice problem out there in the world today. And there's just a lot of bad advice. There's, advice coming from people who I call pretenders, who are well-meaning people who want to serve doctors well, but they don't have the technical expertise to really offer advice that move things forward. And even when it comes to finances, I just want to acknowledge for a second, right? Some of you listening, you may be a little bit uncomfortable. And when it comes to finances, most of us are, right? 62% of us really feel uncomfortable discussing finances. And so that starts with the advice problem right there, is oftentimes we're not comfortable sharing the things that we need to share to get good advice. From there, you jump into just who most advisors are serving. And it turns out a lot of advisors serve a whole bunch of different clientele. They have some engineers, they have some doctors, they have a couple dentists, and maybe a school teacher. And that requires them to know the financial lives of each one of those different industries very, very well. if, for example, if you're working with teachers, you need to know all the pension systems, you need to know how all the different retirement benefits work. And that takes time away from really learning what are the different options and strategies available for dentists to use. Because dentists require different advice, right? In your practice, it may be looking at different kinds of tax credits you can use, or it may look at, trying to optimize your retirement plan so that you can put away more money or better serve your employees and improve employee engagement. So there really is an advice problem. And once again, we see that across the different levels of net worth. There's four different levels of net worth. And once again, if you're an advisor and you're serving all four different levels, you're not a specialist in any one area. And so that to me is really why the doctors require different advice is because you're business owners, you're entrepreneurs, and you're running both a dental practice and you're trying to run your personal lives.
Everybody also has different goals for what they want to do with their money. They want to retire sooner than others. They want to, they don't mind working longer into their lives, but everybody has different requirements because they have different goals as well. So that was something I wanted to add. So let's talk about, I know you already alluded to it. So let's talk about the 5 key concerns of affluent dentists. So what I would like you to do here is kind of go through each one and kind of go in a little bit in depth into those 5 key concerns.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'll spell them out. And this is, I'll define wealth management and I'll tell you what those 5 areas are. And then we'll do a quick dive into each one of the areas. And once again, when you ask most wealth advisors to define wealth management, they're going to give you some kind of definition about meeting your personal goals. And then they're going to jump right into asset allocation and aligning your investments with your goals. And that's really important. But it turns out that's just the first piece of wealth management. That's the investment consulting piece. But there's also other 4 key areas that really move beyond the investment portfolio. Then there's wealth enhancement, which is tax mitigation strategies. How do you get your tax bill down? How do you get your cash flow up? What are the strategies? What are the tactics you can use to make sure you don't pay more than your fair share? Then there's wealth protection. And wealth protection really dives into how do you protect everything that you've worked so hard for as a dentist? How do you protect your practice? How do you protect your family? How do you protect yourself from lawsuit or divorce or some other unforeseen accident taking out the wealth that you spent your lifetime working for? Then there's wealth transfer. Wealth transfer is exactly what it sounds like. It's how do you get your money, how do you get your assets to the next generation and the people that you care about? How do you do the estate planning piece? How do you make sure that, once again, tying it back in with wealth protection, if something happens to your dental practice, how do you know that value is preserved and you can pass that on to the next generation? And then lastly, the people I work with, about a third of them, very, very concerned about different charities and having an impact in the world and supporting the causes that they're passionate about. And that's the charitable gifting piece. And that's how do you take care of the charities and things that really matter to you. And so those are the 5 elements that really go into wealth management. It's investment consulting, wealth enhancement, wealth protection, wealth transfer, and charitable gifting. And we can dive into these. And let's just start with wealth enhancement, for example. So wealth enhancement, this is the tax mitigation strategies. And I've never met a doctor who says, I love paying taxes, Tim. I want to pay as much as I can. Usually the conversation's a little bit of the opposite. It's, Tim, how do I maximize my tax savings? How do I put more money in my pocket and lessen the government? And one of the biggest missed opportunities for dental entrepreneurs out there is really optimizing their retirement plan of their practice. This is the wealth enhancement piece. And what most people don't know is the amount of money that you can put in a plan is anywhere from $5,000 a year up to $300,000 a year, Lynn. And so there's a massive spectrum. And part of it's selecting the right plan for your practice. And these have not just taxable benefits, but also benefits for your employees. There's a study done by the Employee Benefit Research Institute. 80% of workers, 80%, that's 8 out of 10, really find that a retirement plan, such as a 401k, those workers report feeling more productive and more engaged. And I know what some of the audience is thinking. You're thinking, man, I've got a retirement plan and my employees don't feel engaged at all. Well, the reason is you can't just have a plan. You have to talk about the plan. You have to share the benefits. You have to educate your staff on it. It's like, offering clear aligners in your practice. You can say, well, I offer clear aligners, but no one's buying them. Well, my question is, are you talking about them, right? You got to talk about these things. And so that's one brief example on the wealth enhancement piece on how you can really enhance your taxable savings, because you can optimize your retirement plan. And all of a sudden, instead of getting $10,000 or $20,000 a year, you can get up to $300,000 a year.
Got it. No, that makes a whole lot of sense. I mean, really, really good advice there. So let's talk about specifically one of them, which I think is, where you're really well known for, and it's named in your name, Dental Wealth Alliance. So what is wealth management? Where, when you talk specifically about wealth management, where do you go with that? What do you have to say about that topic?
Yeah, no, thank you for that question. And it's going to come back to kind of that definition, right? The wealth management is equal to investment consulting plus wealth enhancement, plus wealth protection, plus wealth transfer, and lastly, charitable gifting. But what a lot of advisors don't talk about is that to actually implement wealth management well, to implement those five core areas, you need a team of the best people helping you move this forward. And no one's an expert in everything. They just can't be. And it's like building a house, Lynn, right? If you're going to go build a house, you're probably going to hire a architect to help you craft the plans of what the house looked like. That's what the wealth manager does. They're going to help you craft the plans of what your future looks like and where you want to go. But then when it's time to actually build the house, well, now you need some contractors. And maybe those contractors are a plumbing contractor, and maybe you have someone putting in a pool, and maybe you need to do some interior design, and maybe you need the contractor for the outside and the landscaping. Well, what kind of house are you going to end up with if you just hire a whole bunch of subcontractors and you turn them loose without a general contractor overseeing the team? It's going to turn out to be a really, really messy project for you. And the same is true for wealth management. Once again, this is why there's so much financial confusion. That's why there's so much financial fear, is most doctors are acting as the general manager of building their entire financial lives. They have a little bit of a plan of where they're going, but they haven't really thought about who's the general manager, who's managing all my subcontractors for me. And the model that I use to help do this is a playbook straight from the super rich. I've been privileged to help underwrite a lot of research on the super rich and really study the super rich to learn what the best of the best and what the wealthiest families on the face of this planet are doing. And what they do is they build something called a virtual family office or a family office. And a family office is really just a vetted team of the best individuals who are there to help you implement and build what you're building in your life. But you need the talent to help do that. And really doing these virtual family offices, we're able to access a lot of the same talent, a lot of the same resources that the super rich do, but we're able to bring it way down the scale to the average doctor. So you don't have to have a 10-figure net worth to really move your life forward in the way that you want and organize and optimize things.
So someone's listening to this and they're hearing things that make a lot of sense to them. They're realizing that you're almost talking about them, but some people may not. How does someone know that they are ready? At what point in their career are they ready to go to someone and say, "I need help with managing my wealth. I need help with deferring some taxes or paying less." Because if you make money, you're going to pay taxes. If you're a productive or a profitable practice, you're going to pay taxes. You want to mitigate those taxes, like you said. And there's ways to do that. But how does someone recognize they're listening to this podcast episode and they say, damn, this is me. What are the signs and symptoms of having an issue potentially or needing help?
Great question. So there's a couple kind of acute symptoms that we can look at, and then there's just the standard practice of always updating and analyzing your plan. But some of the acute symptoms, so to speak, are when you're getting ready to approach any kind of major financial transaction. This may be buying a practice for the first time. This may be acquiring a second practice. This may be selling a third practice, right? You may be in some kind of a transaction, or it may even be, hey, I'm getting ready to retire and step away from dentistry. Those are great times to really assess your plan and make sure you're getting advice that's going to deliver. Or you get a surprise call from your CPA, right? We've all gotten those calls of, hey, you owe extra in taxes. And you're thinking, what the heck? How come my CPA didn't, see this before? Like, why am I getting this big surprise? And so if those things have happened, then it's time to really reach out and get a second opinion to see where you are and to make sure everything's operating as planned. Or maybe you're coming up and, a relationship you've been in isn't working out and you're facing, the horrible prospect of a divorce. Those are times to really take a look at your plan. And so those are some of the acute symptoms, right? Those are some of the warning signs that, hey, it's time to seek advice. But the best time is really right now. And think about it this way. I go in for an annual physical for my doctor every single year. I go in, the doctor does my blood work. He, does the exam, listens to my heart, does all the stuff. And then I get a call about a week and a half later, and he says, "Hey, Tim, your results are in. Everything looks great. I'll see you next year. And I have never been disappointed with that result ever, Lynn. It's because the doctor is proactively looking at my health to catch anything small before it turns into a big thing. And actually, even recently, I've started doing an annual cancer test by a company called Gallery. This is pre-detection of cancer because, as you know, you want to catch cancer early. And the same is true in your wealth planning. You want to catch mistakes early. And so the earlier you get into second, to really take that second opinion and take a second look at your finances, that's a great time to do it. And interestingly enough, once again, I've helped underwrite one of the largest studies on entrepreneurs ever done. We looked at 2,049 entrepreneurs, $35 billion of net worth. And we looked at net worth levels, we looked at income levels, we looked at business profitability, we studied their most pressing concerns in today's marketplace. We even took a look at the advisors that they like to work with. And some interesting things came out of this study. When we asked the entrepreneurs, are you happy with your current advisors? Are you thinking about changing? Shocking statistic came out. Actually, about one third, about 33% of the entrepreneurs, 1 out of 3, are looking to change advisors in the next 2 years. And then we dove a little deeper and we said, well, why are they looking to change? And it's because there's a massive gap between the advice they want versus the advice they're getting. Major, major gap. The entrepreneurs and you as dental entrepreneurs, you want advice on those 5 key areas. You want to know, how do I make smart choices with my money? You want to know, how do you mitigate your taxes? You want to know, how do you protect your money? You want to know how you transfer your money. And lastly, you want to know, how do you take care of the charities and causes that matter to you? But then when we ask you, well, the advisors that you're working with, do they actually provide these services? Major gap. Only about 20 to 25% of advisors are actually providing these services. And then when we ask, well, are advisors providing these services on a holistic basis? Only 6.8% of advisors provide all of this on a proactive, regular basis. And so major, major gap. And so if you feel a little stirring in yourself, like, hey, I'm just not sure if I'm getting the best advice, it's time to reach out for a second opinion.
And that makes a lot of sense. And, there are so many people, and I don't want to call them vultures, but there's so many people who look to do work with dentists. And I think they know that dentists are very quick to make decisions. They don't always do research on it. They definitely will respond to cold calling, which I think is interesting. But I think that there are so many these vultures out there. How do you know that you're, one, needing to make a change? I know you talked about reasons that you may need a wealth management person, but how do you know what is there going on that you think that you need someone else potentially? And how do you know you're actually using a company that's legitimate, that's going to manage your money the way it's supposed to be, or and I'm sure there's many ways to do it. But I think as someone who's not really aware of the industry that well, how does a dentist make a really good decision based on that?
That's a great question. And when it comes to working with someone, you want someone you can trust, right? Trust is everything. You need to work with people who have integrity. You need to work with people who have a good reputation. And what's interesting is, in my industry, and you and I are talking as an outside business activity for me right now, but I'm also a registered investment advisor. That's where I talk about investment portfolios. That's where I make specific recommendations. And what's interesting is, you can actually go on the internet, you can go to Broker Check by FINRA, which is the Financial Industry Regulation Authority, and you can look up the advisors that you're working with. And I would encourage you to do this. Go look up the advisor's permanent record. See if they've got any claims against them. See if they've got any client complaints against them, right? Really look at the people that you're working for or working with. The second thing that you can do is ask your peers, like, who are you working with? What are the results that you're getting? And are you happy with this person? And the last thing you can do is ask the other trusted advisors that you're working with. Ask your CPA, ask your attorney, right? Assuming you're happy with those advisors, like, ask your other advisors, like, who are you working with and why do you work with them? Because integrity matters. And like you mentioned, there's scams that go on, and we see this in the dental industry all the time. And lately, the industry's been rocked by some pretty hefty scandals and Ponzi schemes and people running away with money. So this happens. And it happens, I think, oftentimes because we're living in that space of financial confusion. We're living in that space of fear. And so we think, oh, hey, we have to go do this risky investment. We have to, go pursue this thing that seems really appealing. because we don't have confidence in our existing plans. We've never done that second opinion. We've never stress tested our wealth. We've never actually made sure, like, are our plans going to deliver as we think they're going to deliver? And so, number one, look for someone with integrity. Check out broker, check out their permanent record, ask your peers and ask your other trusted advisors. That's a great way to really find someone who's vetted and someone who can help you make the choice. And then I would throw in a bonus too. Look for someone who has a deep passion for the industry and really takes time getting to know you. When you're in the meetings with them, are they spending more time talking than you? Do they explain things in a way that you can understand that makes sense to you? And are they really focused on getting you to where you want to go? Because at the end of the day, everyone ultimately has the same products, they have the same services, but do they care about you as a person? And are they bringing together the right products and services for you?
That makes a lot of sense. And I want to follow up with one last question, and it's kind of an offshoot of what I just asked you. You hire somebody who's trusted. Is there a specific rate of return that you should expect? How do you know that person isn't performing well enough? You called a dentist friend. The dentist said, my guy's doing great for me. You use him. You do all your checks and balances. You use him. How do you know that person's delivering after everything is set up? What is the expectation? And I know it's different based on how much you have and the wealth you have, but what is a poor result? What's considered a really good result? Can you talk about that real quick?
Yeah, great question, Lynn. And actually, I'm going to talk a little bit about what you do in reputation management and draw an analogy there. And I remember when I was asking you, and I've told this story multiple times, I asked, how many reviews do you need? Like, how much is enough? And I loved what you said. He said more than the competitor in your area. Well, so let's pretend you're in a small town and, your competitor has 10 reviews and you've got 20 reviews. Is that a good result? Yeah, absolutely. But now if you're in a big town and, your largest competitor has 500 reviews and you've got 600, well, is that a good review? Maybe. And so you've got 20 reviews versus 600. Both are good reviews, right? Both are good results because you've got more than your competitor, but they varied based on where you are in the geographic location. And I'm going to argue the same is true for financial planning and wealth management because there's ultimately only one benchmark that matters. There's ultimately only one rate of return that matters. And that's the rate of return that's going to get you to your goals in a way that makes sense for you. And so if you've accumulated a ton of assets and you don't want to take any risk in the market, maybe you're really happy getting 4% or 5% because you know it's going to throw off the income that you need for the rest of your life and you've never got to risk that capital again. Or maybe you're younger and you say, hey, I've got time on my side. I really want to risk the capital. I want to grow the capital as fast as possible. And now you're looking at 11 or 12%. And so it really varies on what is your plan? What are you trying to achieve? And let that be the benchmark. You need a personal benchmark, not all this other stuff, not all the noise, because it really is noise if you're not focused on your goals.
Got it. That makes a whole lot of sense. Thank you for answering that. I know that's something that we didn't plan for a question. One of the questions I know we want to talk about is and you mentioned it, is what is stress testing? So testing the financial plan that you have. How do you stress test it?
So I'm a big sports guy. I love Formula One racing. To me, I love the cars. I love the speed. I love how fast they go. And if you've ever watched Formula One, you absolutely just get excited when your team wins. And if you're a sports fan, you get excited when your team wins. And what's interesting about Formula One and the cars is once again the speed that they travel. And if they're off in the steering of those cars by just a little bit, it can mean the difference between crossing the finish line or crashing into the side and not finishing the race. And the same is true with your wealth planning. If you're off by just a little tiny bit in some areas, it can mean the difference between crossing the finish line or not crossing the finish line. And that's what stress testing is designed to do. Stress testing is designed to really look at the underlying assumptions of your planning to make sure they're going to deliver as promised. Because once again, if you get your inflation assumptions off just a little bit, or you're going to require more money than you planned for in retirement, or your rates of return are lower than expected or higher than expected, or you end up needing long-term care or something kicks in that you weren't expecting, you need a way to deal with that and catch it and stress test those plans. And that's exactly what stress testing does. It's like our president, Ronald Reagan, says, trust, but verify. And once again, this is something the super rich do regularly, and they do very, very well. In fact, in the last 5 years, family offices, which once again are the structure that the super rich use to manage their financial affairs, the vast majority of family offices have done a stress test. And the reason they do it is number one, they want to catch any potential errors before they happen. And secondarily, they want to make sure they're taking advantage of all the opportunities that are out there. And the reason for catching errors, well, it comes back to what you and I were talking about earlier, is there's a lot of predators out there in the world. And maybe you've worked with a predator at some point and you didn't know it. Or you've worked with a pretender who's that well-meaning advisor who wants to serve you well, but the planning just wasn't as good as it could have been. Or you've done this planning incrementally, right? Going back to the subcontractor analogy, you've had a whole bunch of subcontractors running around, but you've never looked at how everything fits together holistically. This is what stress testing is designed to do. It's designed to really look at how everything fits together and make sure you're on the right track. And the results of stress testing can be as simple as you going in for that annual physical, and I'll call you and say, hey, your plans are great. Everything's buttoned up. Stay the course. And what a great result, right? That's going to build financial confidence. It's going to eliminate financial confusion because you know that things have been tested. You know everything's working together. Or you end up catching an error and something you've got to correct, and maybe you have to change the course a little or make an adjustment with an existing provider. But the stress testing is really designed to catch these things and bring them to the forefront so that you're going to get the results that you expect.
Great answer. So, Tim, as we move to the lightning round Q&A, is there anything else that we didn't discuss that you want to cover?
Well, I would tell you that's just get a plan, know where you're heading. You're not going to construct your dream house without having some kind of plans for the house. You'd be a fool if you did that. But what's crazy is when it comes to our wealth, when it comes to the rest of our lives, very few of us have a written financial plan in place. And so take the time, put a plan in place, know where you're going, and then hire the best team possible to help you get there.
Great way to end it. Okay. So, Tim, let's switch gears here a little bit. We're going to spend 5 minutes or so. We're going to go through this lightning round Q&A I like to do. We're going to ask you business related questions. And again, for those that haven't heard it, Tim, I want you to answer them as quickly as you can. Let's see. First one, what consumes your thoughts on a daily basis?
There's really two things. Number one is how do I improve what I do? How do I better clarify my message? How do I communicate in a way that makes sense to people? Because I'm dealing with all these complex topics and I'm always trying to think, how do I make this simple for the doctors I get to serve? And then secondarily is how do I be a good steward of everything that I've given? I've been given a lot. My wife and I have done well. How do I steward those resources, the time, the talent, and the relationships that I have to really continue to make a big impact in the world?
Perfect. Great answer. What 3 adjectives describe your strengths?
Tenacity. I'm very tenacious. I would tell you I'm gritty, and I am very encouraging.
Okay. Do you have a hard time telling people no?
Yes. I should have said no. That would have been funny.
Yeah. All right. How do you define success?
I would tell you success is when you've reached a point in life where you don't have to show up at work anymore. At least for me, it's where you've been able to reach a point where you can do the things you want when you want to do them, or at least have the mindset that you can bring some of those things into the present day to day, and you don't have to put off future goals. And so success is just really being about doing the things you want when you want them with the people you want to do them with.
Great answer. Describe Mondays for you in one word.
Thoughtful.
If you lost everything you had worked for tomorrow, what's the first step in starting over?
First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to study the market and I'm going to figure out what's the problem and what can I go solve? Like, what's the challenge? What's the thing I can solve? And what can I do the quickest and easiest to get money flowing again?
That's a great answer. When you were a kid, what was the first thing you wanted to be when you grew up?
I have always wanted to be an entrepreneur, Lynn, from the various earliest days of being a kid, whether it was starting a paintball store when I was in, junior high and getting resale licenses to, getting sucked into multi-level marketing and thinking this is the greatest thing. And when you're a kid, it's amazing. You built this downline and you just get money without having to work. So being an entrepreneur and a business owner, it has been what I've always wanted to be.
That's great. Do you have a favorite business podcast?
I would tell you one of my favorite business podcasts right now is, what have I been listening to? I still love Building a Story Brand by Donald Miller because it focuses on story, it focuses on communication and just clarity of message.
Great answer. Who would you love to collaborate with and what would you love to collaborate on?
I would tell you it's the people I am collaborating with right now in dentistry, and it's the things we're building together, whether it's with Elijah Desmond or Anissa Holmes or just some of my friends that I get the privilege of working with every single day. And so I am literally doing it right now. I don't have to dream about it.
That's good. That's good. What book have you read multiple times, or what is your favorite book that you recommend other people read?
The one that has really changed my life the most recently has been Who Not How by Dan Sullivan and Ben Harding. And just that concept of stop asking, how can I do this? Because I used to ask that question all the time. And now I like the question, who can do this for me?
Last question, and I ask it to everybody. What is one subscription, either personal or business, that you could not live without?
My Bible app. I can't live without it.
Okay. So, Tim, this was great. Thank you so much for having a little fun with the lightning round Q&A. How can people reach out to you if they want to reach out to you about Dental Wealth Alliance or anything else that you do?
Oh, I'm super easy to find. All you have to do is jump on LinkedIn and type in Tim McNeely. You can visit my website at timmcneely.com. You can give me a phone call or shoot me a text at 818-730-2000. That's 818-730-2000. Happy to answer any questions or find me in dental, nifty, thrifty dentist and ask a question there. So I'm easy to find.
Yeah, just like me, easy to find. If you look you up, you'll find him. That's as simple as that. Tim, this was great. Thank you so much for joining me today on this podcast episode. It was great to get some of your expertise in the wealth management space. Guys, if you are listening to this podcast and things are ringing a bell like, hey, I actually, I'm disappointed in my returns. I'm disappointed in what I've gotten from my financial advisor. I'm disappointed in just where things stand. Reach out to Tim. Tim will be able to help you. He gave you his contact information. He'll let you ask any questions you want. Contact him, text him. He said, reach out to him. If you like the episode, please share it. Please tell your colleagues about it. Please like us, review us, do everything you can to help promote the podcast. Remember, Supercharge Your Dental Practice 2025 is September 26th and 27th in Scottsdale, Arizona. Details to be released shortly, but you can go to superchargeyourdentalpractice.com to find out more information. And remember, your reputation matters. Tim, thank you so much for joining me today, and we'll talk to everyone soon.